The biggest thing for me in my life was my father dying at age 47 of a heart attack or myocardial infarction. I was 16. I decided I wanted to be a cardiologist and focus on cardiovascular disease prevention.
Joining us today is Dr. Michael Davidson, the CEO of NewAmsterdam Pharma. It's unbelievable how rare it is to meet a CEO like yourself that is still actively practicing medicine.
It's challenging in many ways. It's doing investor meetings or board calls in between patients.
You have a very unique understanding of what's happening from a hands-on perspective with your patients. You're seeing all aspects of the healthcare value chain.
We're developing a cholesterol drug to address this unmet medical need that is driving the residual risk that's still this leading cause of death in the world. It's all about the LDL lowering that matters.
A number of different cardiovascular drugs struggle to get to market.
It does take a lot of capital and time. You have to be bold, patient, and you have to have investors that do have a long-term view of the company. My hope is that we do move to more of a primordial prevention mode for the population instead of waiting till people have heart disease and then treating more aggressively.
Welcome to today's episode. I'm really excited about this conversation because we're diving into a unique blend of medicine, biotech innovation, and leadership with someone who sits at the intersection of all three. Joining us today is Dr. Michael Davidson, the CEO of NewAmsterdam Pharma. Just to quickly introduce you, Dr. Davidson, if you don't mind, I know you're very humble, but your path has been quite successful. And I know you're no stranger to the success in the life sciences world as both a cardiologist and a pharmaceutical entrepreneur, which is very unique. Dr. Davidson is still practicing medicine. He has led several groundbreaking companies to some very major milestones. He previously served as the CMO of Corvidia Therapeutics, which was acquired by Novo Nordisk. He also co-founded Omthera Pharmaceuticals, which later sold to AstraZeneca. His career is really a masterclass in building innovative ventures with a focus, of course, on the cardiovascular space. Today, Dr. Davidson, as I mentioned earlier, leads NewAmsterdam Pharma, a company that's focused on solving one of the largest challenges in cardiovascular care by helping patients who cannot achieve their cholesterol goals with statins alone. They have a lead therapy that's a CETP inhibitor designed to lower LDL cholesterol, offering a new hope for patients who are either statin intolerant or need additional LDL lowering support. So we're going to dive into what makes NewAmsterdam unique, especially in an industry where cardiovascular innovation is often overshadowed, I have to say, by breakthroughs in areas like oncology and rare disease. And of course, we're going to talk about how the company is balancing science, business strategy, as well as, of course, a very important thing to Dr. Davidson, which is patient needs. So just to quickly start off with your personal story, Dr. Davidson, again, you've had an incredible journey from clinical medicine to entrepreneurship to building multiple companies along the way. What inspired you to make that transition, and what challenges did you face early on?
Yeah, thanks, Chase. It's great to be with you. I obviously the biggest thing for me in my life was my father dying at age 47 of a heart attack or myocardial infarction. I was 16, and it was obviously a very turning point for me. I always wanted to, I wanted to be a doctor since age 12. I had an uncle who was a very prominent family doctor. So my hope was to go into family medicine. And after this happened, this tragedy, I decided I wanted to be a cardiologist and focus on prevention because he had no warning signs, nothing that would indicate risk of heart disease other than a family history. And so I got my cholesterol checked. It was really elevated at age 16. And so I decided to embark on a career on cardiovascular disease prevention. And so that's been my path. Starting in medical school, I did research on niacin and then residency at Rush in Chicago. I did a lot of work on omega-3 fatty acids and started a research company called Chicago Center for Clinical Research, which was my largest in the country as far as doing clinical trials. So I did 1,000 different clinical trials, oat bran to lower cholesterol, fish oils, of course, statins. But bored's not exactly the right word, but I got to the point where I did so many trials and was really involved in consulting and working with companies, giving them advice. I really wanted to move to the other side and start developing my own therapies. And so through my connections, I was able to bring out Upanova from a Swiss company, and that was the start of my biotech kind of journey. And I always looked at it as I'm still a doctor taking care of patients. Now I want to do that with trying to develop a new therapy that will address a very important unmet medical need. So that was the shift for me. That happened in 2009 approximately, and not a great time to start a biotech company, but it worked out and got the funding, and it's been now on to my third company beyond that. So it's been a great journey, and fortunately had very significant successful exits along the way.
I mean, you've held several leadership roles, including now CEO, CMO. How have those experiences shaped your leadership style at New Amsterdam?
So I've always was the founder of the company. So the first company, I was the CMO because I brought on a former Merck executive. So I didn't really think I had the CEO experience, even though I did start the research company at about over 100 people. And I was the CEO, so I had that experience as starting a company from scratch and building it and then selling it. But I thought the pharmaceutical biotech industry was different, and I was happy to do that because he had access to the funding. I didn't know the financing world, so I was the science person behind it. And then for my next company, Corvidia, I also spun out the drug from AstraZeneca. I thought I was ready to be CEO, and it was the starting of that. I brought on two other great scientists and a business partner as the founders with me, and we did really well. Got funding through Series B, and one of the disappointing things was the VC actually said, you're doing great, but we really want a business guy to bring the company public. So I was disappointed, but I understood. So I took a step down to CMO, and we fortunately we got acquired by Novo Nordisk before we had the IPO. So it all worked out well for everybody. But it was a time to me to reflect on, okay, where are my strengths and weaknesses? I felt I had a great experience with clinical trials and patient outcomes and care and designing studies, uh, all the aspects of running a trial, which are very important for a biotech company. But I learned a lot about the business side of things, especially managing people. And I think I do when I do my personality testing, I come out very different from typical CEOs. I'm not the extrovert, kind of the high energy kind of guy. I'm more of the compassionate leader, which I tend to evoke that type of style. Like the biggest hero for me is Abraham Lincoln. I read a lot of books on Lincoln on management and leadership, and that's kind of how I've decided to be about who I am as a leader. And so I think people connect with that. I mean, they know that I'm loyal and dedicated and compassionate, and those characteristics I think get people to follow you. And it's worked well, and we got developing a great team, and the company New Amsterdam has done exceptionally well so far with new data to come out soon. So we're ready to turn over some very important phase 3 cards in the next several weeks.
There's actually a great book written, Team of Rivals. Did you ever read
Yeah.
it?
Oh yeah, of course. One of my favorite books. Yeah. So
Fan-
it's
fantastic read. Speaking about Abe Lincoln, and before we get into a conversation about New Amsterdam, I really want to dive a little bit deeper into the impact that you've had as a leader, taking on dual role, both as CEO and physician. It's unbelievable how rare it is to meet a CEO like yourself that is still actively practicing medicine. Um, which I find to be absolutely incredible. The fact that you have a very unique understanding of what's happening from a hands-on perspective with your patients. You're seeing all aspects of the healthcare value chain, from all the research that's being done, all the way through the clinical trials that are being done, and being able to also have a front row seat to the commercial impact and viability of your products. as an actively practicing physician. So again, not many CEOs, as I mentioned earlier, are practicing medicine actively. What is it like balancing the two roles? And how does your clinical experience inform the way you lead New Amsterdam day to day?
Okay, sure. First of all, I would say right off the start, it's not always easy. It's in fact it's challenging in many ways. 'Cause I see patients 4 days a month, so 1 day a week approximately. So it's a busy day. In fact, I'm so much more fatigued after a patient day than any other day as CEO. It's a very busy schedule for those days. But it's not just patients; it's doing investor meetings or board calls or other meetings during the day with in between patients and things like that. I'm also fortunate that I have a fellow that works with me and a nurse that helps a lot with that. And I don't have the ill patients usually. I'm doing lipid management, cholesterol management. So that's I think it makes it feasible for me to do this. But I do spend a lot of time even out of the clinic, addressing patient questions and labs and things like that, follow-ups and stuff. So it's a significant time commitment, but I love it. I really have a passion for it, and I really enjoy it, especially helping patients, which has really helped a lot on a number of levels for being CEO of New Amsterdam. First of all, we're developing a cholesterol drug, and so having that experience and seeing in the trenches what it's like treating a patient at all aspects, the insurance reimbursement issues, the patient's concerns about side effects and safety, how to evaluate, the drug's response and what keep people motivated, what's clinical inertia and how do we overcome that. All those things are very important strategically for the company to know how to, and I get a firsthand view of that as the clinician, and so that really makes a difference in how we strategically look at what we're doing as we prepare for our clinical trials and for our launch, our commercial launch of the product. So it really has a lot of value add to the company as far as the knowledge gain by being in that role, but also I think I can speak for my great team. They are inspired by it because I always say to them every time we're meeting as a company, I say I want you to know how important what you're doing is for what is happening with me and my patients. We're really doing a great, or we're filling a great unmet need in the future, and I can tell you firsthand that what we're doing is extremely important. It's going to make a big difference for these patients. And I think that is inspiring to the staff. But that's what it's all about. You want to work for a company where you feel that you're both valued as a person and inspired to do what you do.
Out of curiosity, if we focus on the the product that you're developing, how has been a practicing cardiologist help shape the development of that product and really how does that tie into some of your approach to patient care at New Amsterdam as well?
Sure. I think that the key thing is that statins are the mainstay. The Lipitor, Crestor, everyone knows about those drugs at least, or most people do, and they're great drugs, and I think they saved my life as a person. So I'm very very grateful for the discovery of those drugs, and I've done a tremendous amount of research over the years with statins. What I've learned as a clinician is that although statins are fantastic drugs, there are many patients who are not adequately treated with statins. Either they cannot tolerate them, or even when they're on them at their highest tolerated dose, there's still residual risk. And that residual risk is other lipid factors like high LPLA or further LDL that's still too high, or small LDL particles, or diabetes, metabolic syndrome. So obicetrapib, our drug, is a fantastic add-on to statins because it addresses all those residual risk factors. It improves diabetes while statins make it potentially worse. It lowers LPLA when statins make LPLA go higher. It lowers the small particles, which statins don't really address very well. So it's a perfect drug to combine with statins to address this unmet medical need that I believe and others believe is driving the residual risk that's still very, very the leading cause of cardiovascular, this leading cause of death in the world. So we at the end of the day, and we have data to turn over soon, but assuming we're optimistic that at the end of the day, we have statins and then we have obicetrapib plus ezetimibe, our combination pill, and you're pretty much for 90% of the patients, that's all you need: oral, safe, well tolerated, and you have all the tools that can make a big difference in preventing and treating heart disease. The other thing I would say is what most investors and even uh, biotech companies or pharma companies don't appreciate, which I learned significantly as being a clinician, is how safety is so much more important than people realize. Tolerability and safety really make the biggest difference when it comes to uptake by a patient. They would much prefer a well-tolerated drug, the drug that has high efficacy but has some side effects. Even if the side effects are manageable, any side effect is a detriment, more so than most people realize, other than the patients themselves. They're very, very, even today more than ever, very, very sensitive to what side effects might be for drugs, and they're reading labels, they're going on the internet, and so the more we can document the safety of a drug like obicetrapib, which we so far to date we've had an extremely good tolerability profile, that's going to lead to both clinical success and commercial success for NewAmsterdam Pharma.
Yeah, I know a number of patients who unfortunately can't tolerate statins because of myositis and may have elevated LFTs. So the tolerability piece is of critical importance. Out of curiosity, when you think about um, again obicetrapib and it's obviously generating a lot of excitement as a CETP inhibitor. For those less familiar with it, can you help explain why this makes it so innovative and really how it addresses this unmet need in LDL management?
Yes, I think that the important thing is it has been around as a target for a long time. In fact, I was the first one to patent CETP inhibition back in the 90s. The problem has been the drugs that were first developed had issues. First one being torcetrapib, which was a Pfizer drug, was going to be the next Lipitor, had off-target toxicity. And it was all about HDL raising, because CETP inhibition also dramatically raises your HDL cholesterol, which we thought was the holy grail, that the more you raise HDL, the better for reducing heart disease. But also lowers LDL a little bit, these other CETP inhibitors. Now we found one that lowers it a lot. And so it turns out that our initial thinking about CETP inhibition was not exactly correct. It's not about the HDL raising, it's about the LDL lowering. And we know that CETP loss of function in humans leads to longevity, and it's all about the LDL lowering that matters. So obicetrapib being a very potent CETP inhibitor, we have the validation from genomic studies showing that loss of function does markedly improve reducing heart disease and improving longevity. Has led us to go ahead and move forward with the fifth CETP inhibitor because of this profile of really predominant effects on lowering LDL cholesterol.
No, absolutely. One other question somewhat related to that one is obviously a lot of, you talked about the struggles Pfizer had. I've seen a number of different cardiovascular drugs struggle to get to market due to factors like time and scale required for clinical trials. How has NewAmsterdam helped navigate some of that complexity? And maybe you can outline what some of those challenges have been and how you've been able to successfully navigate those.
There's a good reason why there aren't that many cardiovascular biotech companies, because it does take a lot of capital and time, because you got to do the long cardiovascular outcome trials. And so those are the biggest challenges. It's the leading cause of death, and it's still the leading cause of death despite a lot of good therapies. But it takes a lot of money and capital and time to get to the finish line. So I feel very proud of one important decision we made with NewAmsterdam, and I was grateful that our investors went along with it. We decided in 2022 that we were going to go for it. We had maybe 100 million in the bank, which sounds like a lot of money, but we started our two large phase 3 LDL trials and our cardiovascular outcome trial, 9,500 patient outcome study at the same time, knowing we did not have enough money to finish the trials. And I promised our investor chairman of the board that we would figure out how to get the money. We would figure out how to get the money along the way. And we were able to do that and successfully do that along the way. But we started because we had to start. We had to get going. And so I think that's an example of why it is so difficult. We have, people are reluctant to dive in with these large investments and taking a long time to get to the finish line without realizing they get, the big thing about, of course, is dilution, and you got to raise more money along the way. And that is, that's not a really great biotech story. They like to be able to finance and then build value, then finance again at a higher valuation. And so you have these issues that you have to deal with. But in our case, we're able to demonstrate really competent, great execution on the trials themselves with a few little phase 2 readouts along the way to help us that created the value that led us to get more financing. And so, we took a gamble. It paid off, but biotech is not for the faint of heart. And I think the lessons learned is you have to be bold. You have to be patient, and you have to have investors that do have a long-term view of the company. And I think we're getting more and more investors that think that way. And we also, of course, have seen that the cardiometabolic area become a lot more lucrative now with the GLP-1s, the great success there, and how that's turned around, Lilly and Novo, major changes in valuations with cardiometabolic drugs, with data, with good data showing the benefits. And so I think we're on another, I think hopefully another good uptick in investment in cardiovascular companies. And we believe hopefully that NewAmsterdam will be one of those other success stories to drive other entrepreneurs to consider cardiovascular assets and trials to move forward, because the patients need these therapies.
Absolutely. Are there plans, by the way, to develop any additional therapies or expand your portfolio beyond cholesterol management when the time is right?
We are thinking about it because we do have an excellent team that knows how to develop drugs, and so we are going to consider building a pipeline. Obviously, once we get the data in hand and we see how we're doing with obicetrapib, but that's something that we're thinking about right now for sure.
Looking beyond NewAmsterdam, where do you see the biggest opportunities in cardiovascular drug development over the next decade?
I think still oral, simple, anything that addresses these causal risk factors that are highly effective are going to be a very important part of the armamentarium. But I think that my hope is that we do move to more of a primordial prevention mode for the population, instead of waiting till people have heart disease and then treating more aggressively, that we do start treating people much earlier in life with these therapies, as opposed to waiting until 40, 50 years old and then starting treatment. So that's one of my hopes about even the therapies, and allowing therapies to be developed with that kind of context in mind, which is a rethinking of regulatory policy, because it's always about reducing events, and you have to have high risk people to reduce events. And that brings me to where I think imaging modalities, plaque, are going through a renaissance with non-invasive imaging of plaque, CT angiograms, looking at plaque and using that as a way to guide drug development. So we can intervene a lot earlier in the process and show a benefit. And if we can get that type of clinical development paradigm in place with regulatory support, of course, the thought leaders have to come on board, and we need to get out of this mindset of outcome studies for every single treatment, and really look at other strategies to assess benefits. I think that time is starting to come again. We thought we had that in place, and things kind of had a little bit of a stalling period. I think we're getting a little bit more with new technology, getting back on track to showing how much we can use imaging to utilize for drug development. That I think is the future. Primordial prevention, earlier prevention, using imaging for drug development, and then we can have a lot more therapies available to patients, and we could address things that are beyond lipids now, inflammation, things that might have direct effects on atherosclerosis that could be quite helpful. And then for heart failure and treatment there, understanding now the pathophysiology of heart failure, especially heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, and how that is driven by cardiometabolic disease and inflammation. I think we can make a big difference there as well. But what I do believe is we have the tools available or soon to be available that can really wipe out heart disease. Now it's all that matter of, do we have the will to give the researchers the tools to get these drugs into the hands of patients sooner than later, as opposed to having to invest so much capital and time into doing these big cardiovascular outcome trials.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I got another call last week from another friend who read me his LDL number, which is over 180. Said that he was either thinking about getting an IMT or a calcium score check, and asked me. He said his PCP won't prescribe rosuvastatin or atorvastatin, and he already changed his diet, works out, but because he doesn't meet, again, this kind of goes back to the longer conversation we're having about prevention and how outdated some of these standards are from a preventative health perspective, where we aren't doing the best that we can to start treating this disease earlier on. Whereas you've got a lot of longevity experts who are all talking about how they started early treatments for things like hypercholesterolemia and other forms of disease a lot sooner in life. And I'm one of those individuals. Again, you and I talked about this before. Like, I'm all about heavy prevention, especially when it comes to cardiovascular disease risk factors. You talked a bit about imaging and some of the diagnostic modalities that may be able to support drug development. Can you help talk a little bit more about that? More specifically, what role? Again, obviously, there's a lot happening with artificial intelligence right now as well, and how AI is being leveraged, both on the discovery side, but also from the diagnostic side for things like image recognition technology. Talk to me a little bit more about where things are going with image-based diagnostics and how all these new technologies can help further support it.
Right. You mentioned calcium scoring. So we do that all the time. That's what we do is one of our initial kind of risk assessments. It's a great tool, very easy to do, not expensive, very little radiation exposure. So it's a very, very good test. The thing is, you can't really do it before age 40 for a male or age 50 for a female. This doesn't have the people don't have calcified plaques by then. Plus, you can't use it for monitoring. Once you have calcium, you give a statin, for example, the calcification gets worse because you're making the plaque heal and get more calcified. So there's challenges on the calcium scanning for both earlier detection, but also for follow-up. So I'm really excited about the AI technology. One's called Clearly, that can do plaque histology with CT angio. Another, HeartFlow, has a plaque analysis plan, and there are others that are being developed that really are very, very helpful in a lipid clinic. So we have those tools. We also have genomics. We can get much better polygenic risk scores that can help us determine who's at risk early in life as opposed to waiting till they have the event. So I think it's a combination of imaging, early genomic testing, even some of these more advanced lab tests that we can utilize that can be very helpful in getting people on board earlier in life to make a difference. But that's the future. I think Alzheimer's is another example. I got a very interested in Alzheimer's, and at NewAmsterdam we're having Alzheimer's approach too, where we think our drug might help Alzheimer's. So it's a similar issue. I mean, you have We believe that Alzheimer's, especially when you have APOE4, a certain genotype, the disease process starting many years before the pathology is evident. And so with good biomarkers that are available now, like tau 217 and amyloid 40/42 ratios and things like that, we can start preventing Alzheimer's instead of waiting until they have major neurological damage already before you start treating the disease. So that to me, because Alzheimer's and heart disease have a lot of overlapping factors, and that's why I think what we're doing with obicetrapib is a good example of how lipid management and risk factor management can also apply to Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That's definitely a topic. I mean, we're seeing. I wish we were going to. So much money is being spent from an R&D perspective and investing in prospective Alzheimer's treatments, and I still think there's, to your point now, like there's so much. There's a lot that we still don't even fully understand from the pathophysiology of the disease, both for Alzheimer's as well as other forms of neurodegenerative disease. So it's not surprising to see the connection between both cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's. I have to ask, as cardiovascular care evolves, how do you think the role of the physician will change? Do you see more doctors taking on leadership roles in biopharma, as you have? What do you see happening in the industry?
I hope so. I mean, I think I kind of feel like an old man now in the biotech. We're a lot more younger people, but but I think it is something you can think about my experience first as a physician early on as a clinical trialist and even translational medicine at University of Chicago. The background that I had, really serves me well as a biotech executive. And I don't think most doctors are even aware of that path at all for for their first decades of being a doctor. And so so I think having the I like to be a role model, and having role models to show doctors that there is another path beyond the standard taking care of patients, which is fantastic. That I still have that passion for a lot of other things that they could be doing, that would be also very rewarding. And so I think we need to have more of that exposure to young physicians so they can have that opportunity that I now have, and that I think could evolve. I think there is also more opening. Like I said, I had this investor who thought, most of the time doctors may not be the best executives for whatever. I think it's changing now too. I think a lot of doctors are becoming very good executives, and a lot of them are doing the right training and background to do that. So I think doctors can become really good executives, even public company CEOs, which is I'm seeing a few others like the CEO of Biohaven and I got together, and another MD, and so
Vlad
there's
is
some of
great.
us out there. Yeah.
Vlad
Yes.
is great. Vlad
But
is great.
Vlad is another example, and extremely successful, and he had a little bit more of a pharma background than I did coming into the biotech world, but still, I mean, he had that passion as a physician that I think it made all the difference in the world at Biohaven. So I think I've learned a lot from just listening to him. But those are we're two examples of biotech CEOs that are MDs and loves taking care of patients.
I've interviewed Vlad before. He's coming back on again.
Okay.
He does have an incredible story from his time at BMS and at Yale and a lot more. He's an incredible human. But I have to ask, I want to hear a funny story. Anything funny or hilarious from a patient perspective, or with something unique or interesting that has occurred within life sciences that is like, it was just an ironic or funny moment. Can you think of anything or no?
Trying to think what's funny. I mean, I think
It doesn't have to be funny. Just kind of, just fun, fun. It doesn't even have to be funny.
Um, well, I the thing is it's this kind of the patients. So much of what I've learned about, kind of like a nuance of a single patient, had a like for example, uh, I really enjoy like seeing people that are over 100 years old. Why do they live to be 100 years old? So one of them is she smokes she smokes 2 pack of cigarettes a day since she was 18. Okay, so she's 100, gonna be 101, I think, if not today. I mean, in the next couple of days. I'm over 101 years old, still smokes. Uh, the family sent her to me thinking I would tell her to stop smoking, and I kind of I said you should stop smoking, but what am I going to tell you? She said that she's still smoking. So we decided to do her genomics to try to figure out why is a 101-year-old woman smoking 2 cigarettes per day still cognitively 100% and active and so forth. So we did her genes and we found that she has what's called the Klotho gene. They're familiar with that. And so I got interested in Klotho, and so do you know Ned David? Do you know Ned at all? He's at
No.
Unity, started Unity Farm. But anyway, Ned's a longevity, multiple entrepreneur. He and I got to know each other. And so I was able to license out Klotho from Unity. And we just closed our Series A financing um, just this week, actually. Jeff Bezos was an investor. I mean, we have True Ventures.
Yeah,
Kevin
of
Rose,
course.
Kevin Rose. Yeah, he led the Series A. So we're now going to develop that as a therapeutic protein for preventing treating Alzheimer's disease. So it's kind of how
That's
I think about things. Yeah, you see individual patients and you think about why is that happening. Yeah, so that's the one interesting story that I have. So yeah, that's so hopefully we get that to patients. The Klotho protein is we don't the hardest part was no one exactly knows how it works. But we have so many studies showing that in animal models it improves cognition. People that have the gene, yeah, longevity, prevent Alzheimer's, prevent heart disease. We don't know how it works. And so we had a hard time raising money for that reason because people didn't understand how the mechanism of action. So but now we're
interesting.
funded. We brought a CEO on to um, to do it. I'm the chairman of the board, so it's another startup that we're doing.
Well, I have to say, Dr. Davidson, this has been an incredible conversation. Again, thank you so much again for sharing your journey and insights with us. It's really not every day we hear from someone like yourself who's shaping the future of cardiovascular care, both I guess in the clinic as well as in the boardroom. So again, for our listeners, again, stay tuned for more updates on obicetrapib as NewAmsterdam moves closer to market launch. And again, thanks for joining us again, Dr. Davidson, and we wish you and the team the best of luck.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Chase. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.